Hi, this is James Sedley, and welcome back to the Living in Naples channel. In today's episode, I'm going to provide a primer on flood insurance for buyers who are interested in purchasing in Southwest Florida and more generally. I get a lot of questions about this topic, and even when I don't, it's something that I believe every buyer should get a good handle on, both from a risk mitigation and financial planning perspective, as well as for just overall budgeting purposes as you are thinking about making the purchase of a new home. As always, I appreciate you watching, and please do keep sharing, subscribing, and liking. And with that, let's get to the top 6 things that I believe you should know about flood insurance. Number 1, you should consider purchasing flood insurance even if it isn't required by your lender or if you don't live in a high-risk flood area. With very few exceptions, just about every home and community in the country is eligible to purchase flood insurance via the federal government's National Flood Insurance Policy, or NFIP. And given that the majority of homeowners insurance policies do not cover damage from flood insurance, adding on a flood policy can be a very smart financial decision. If you know that in an average year, 40% of NFIP claims come from outside of designated special flood hazard areas, that might also flip the scales for you a bit on your decision. Also think about, just as an example, Hurricane Ian's impact on Central Florida so far from the coast just this past year as one very vivid recent example. Number 2, what is a special flood hazard area? As I just noted, an average of 40% of NFIP claims come from outside of these SFHAs. So that, of course, means that about 60% come from within the special flood hazard areas. Those areas are those that have been designated to have the highest risk for floods, common sense. These are zones that begin with the letters A or V on flood insurance rate maps, which you can check at floodsmart.gov. Again, floodsmart.gov. In the Naples and Marco area, you can generally assume that most properties will be located in an SFHA. So definitely double check that, but most of the areas that I sell in there are going to be in one form of SFHA or another. Brings us to number 3, and that is, where can I buy flood insurance and how should I shop for it? Since the NFIP is a federal program, the good news is that there isn't really a need to shop for a flood insurance policy. Simply talk with your homeowner's insurance provider about adding flood insurance, and they'll be able to provide you with the standard policy options and premiums that will be consistent across all providers. Number 4, what's the story with elevation certificates, or ECs? When FEMA transitioned to the current NFIP version 2.0, the universal requirement to have an elevation certificate to get a flood insurance policy was removed. That said, getting an elevation certificate may lower a homeowner's flood insurance premium if it shows, for example, that your home's lowest level floor is higher than the elevation that floodwaters are estimated to have a 1% chance of reaching or exceeding in any given year, which of course is a driver for the flood designations. Number 5. How much can I expect to pay for flood insurance? The $1 million question, thankfully, not a $1 million question. While this is a question that is best left to an insurance agent, I can tell you that if you can assume or carry over an existing flood insurance policy from the seller of the home you're purchasing, you will most likely achieve some savings versus a new policy. For example, a recent flood policy in the AE zone area was over double for a new policy versus continuing from the existing policy. And our final number 6 question is, won't I be covered by FEMA disaster relief in the event of a flood caused by a natural disaster? Just my opinion here, but there's so many reasons not to count on FEMA as a backstop versus purchasing your own flood policy. Federal disaster assistance comes primarily in the form of low-interest disaster loans that you must repay with interest, and they're only available when there is a presidential disaster declaration for federal disaster assistance. And unfortunately, floods are not always deemed as such. I know this is not the sexiest or most fun of topics, but thinking about flood insurance is important as you consider living in a coastal paradise like Southwest Florida. So I hope this was helpful, and look forward to answering questions you have about real estate here in the area, including insurance. Again, thanks so much for tuning in, liking, subscribing, and sharing, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care.